lust, love, and everything in between. "Lucy, you'll never guess who's back in town," said Coralie Watkins, as I handed her the menu. "Turner Calhoun. Weren't you in the same class before?" I nodded, ignoring the sudden silly beating of my heart. "Give me a hot chocolate. He's single again." "But I don't think it will last." "Any woman under 60 will try to catch up with him," laughed Coralie. "I'll be right back with your hot chocolate," I said, trying to put the memories aside, and quickly walked away. I've been in love with Turner Calhoun since I was 12. It was really funny. A simple, mousy little Lucy Bishop in love with the heartthrob of the town. But I couldn't help myself. Not only was Turner tall, with jet black hair, dark twinkling eyes, and a sinister crooked smile, but he was also really nice. Did not do it. When we worked together on the school newspaper, he always listened to everything I had to say. For most of my high school years, I was in fantasy mode about Turner, dreaming of him walking past my glasses and ugly clothes and falling head over heels in love with me. Of course, that never happened. Turner has dated girls like Mercy Gates and Susie Schaffer. They are school beauties with long flowing hair and flawless skin. Then we all graduated from high school. Turner went to college and started a used car business. He was very successful. I tracked his progress in our annual high school newsletter and also learned that his marriage ended in divorce. But I didn't know why he decided to go back to the city. That night, when he finished his shift, his leg hurt. Not only did I keep up with the usual flow of customers, but his boss, Tony, told me to dress up the shop for Christmas. So I spent a good portion of my lunch break taking the Christmas tree out of the storeroom, decorating it, and wandering around while I got cake, coffee, and meatloaf. Coralie wasn't the only customer to comment on Turner's return. Bottom. In a small town like Homer, his return was big news. On his way home, he stopped at the grocery store to pick up what his mother had asked for. It was almost Christmas. Time for fun parties and with loved ones. Not for me. I used to live in the same house in the same town as usual. Mum was still bullying me like she was when I was 5. And as far as I could see, there was no way out. "Oh, Lucy Bishop, stop feeling sorry for yourself," I muttered. As soon as I opened the front door, my mother called my name. "Lucy, where have you been?" "You wanted me to stop by the grocery store, remember?" I said, grabbing a paper bag and starting to unload. Mum groaned. "Well, tonight is my book club. I want you to fix my hair." "After dinner, I still have time," I replied. "It must be something fast," grumbled Mother. "How about a tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich?" She shrugged her shoulders. She forced me to laugh. Mum was 78 years old. I was her late baby born when she was 46 years old. And to Mom, I was in my early 30s now, but I was always the little girl who could bully her. "Turner Calhoun is back in town," she said, sitting down at the kitchen table. "He bought the big old house that Andy and Nancy Meyer had." "That's good," nodded as he stirred the soup, wondering if Turner still resembled the handsome boy from the last time we met. "He needs a housekeeper 4 hours a week," Mom said. "I called him and said you'd do it. They said tomorrow she'll leave at 3 o'clock sharp." "Forgive me." I stared at her. "Mom, you have no right to do that." She frowned. "Get the soup off the stove before it boils, Lucy." "And I had the right to hire you as a housekeeper." "You live under my roof, and I have to help you with your living expenses, miss." My hands were shaking as I was pouring the soup into the bowl. Very upset. But I often felt that whatever I was doing wasn't good enough for her. After we ate, I helped Mummy style her hair into pretty curls. Then her friend Tilly took her to a reading group at the local library. She took a shower and turned on the TV. When I couldn't concentrate, I turned off the power again and climbed the stairs slowly. I sat on my bed and thought back to my childhood. When I arrived, his brother John had already left home and got married, and his sister Susan had just graduated from college. My birth was a surprise, to say the least. Mum was enjoying her empty nest and looking forward to a life of bridge parties and quiet vacations with her dad. I was never abused or neglected as a child, but I absorbed the fact that at a very early age there was nothing but unwelcome embarrassment. My parents were tired all the time. My mother didn't like jeans or brightly coloured clothes, so I didn't dress like the other girls. I was wearing lace-up shoes, and my hair was short. I felt like a freak and had no friends, but I learned to be quiet, hard-working, and do whatever I was told. Somehow, I never lost those habits. I applied to college and got in on the first try, but his father had a stroke 2 weeks before I left. Mum couldn't have done it alone. A few years later her father died and her mother fell ill. So I stayed. I loved my mum, but at times I felt so trapped. I wondered what it would be like to have an apartment, a social life, and a closet full of cute clothes. My lovely mum had a tantrum when she saw me. My thoughts turned to Turner, and I let out a small groan of despair. I spent the next day in a state of terror, and when my shift at the diner ended, I reluctantly went to Turner's. I told myself 4 hours a week wouldn't be too bad. Turner may not have been there either. You might as well take this as a welcome break from Mum by doing some simple chores while listening to the radio. I smiled as I parked in front of the house Turner moved into. The Myers' old house was a big red brick building that looked like something out of an old movie. I thought it would be wonderful to decorate for Christmas and have fun and sparkle with the lights. When I rang the doorbell, the smile disappeared, and suddenly I became nervous again. I took a deep breath and told myself not to be so stupid. I was no longer a stupid teenager with stars in my eyes. I was a grown woman. And Turner has grown up as well. He could go bald with a big beer belly. Then he opened the door, and my mouth dropped slightly as he smiled into my eyes. "Hi," I cried awkwardly. Turner's hair may have receded a bit, but he was far from bald and showed no signs of a beer belly. If anything, he was even more attractive than the boy I remembered, Bottom. He was now a man who was wider and stronger, with a sexy glow in his brown eyes. "Come in," he said. "Let me guide you and tell you what you need." When Turner explained my duties, I was confident that I would enjoy every minute of my time at his house. The dusty, neglected room aroused attention. Boxes of books and knickknacks were piled up against one wall of his, and Turner asked me to unpack them. So was the kitchen. A few pots and dishes were unpacked, but I had to scrub the cupboards clean and then organize them with the utensils that were still in the box. "I hope it's not too overwhelming," Turner said. I smiled and shook my head. "No, it's a challenge. You must think I'm lazy, but I'm trying to grow my business, and it's taking longer than I thought." "Got it. Your mother suggested 4 hours a week, but she would really appreciate it if you could do a little more." "Good," I nodded happily. This home is a welcome change from Herb's diner. "How are you, Lucia?" Turner asked quietly. "You haven't changed much." It wasn't much of a compliment, and he forced himself to laugh. "I am doing well." "You always stood out in high school," he said. "I think so," I replied, thinking of the horrible civilian clothes I had to wear. Every other girl was about crazy hair, excessive makeup, and wild outfits, Turner said. "You stood out like a little flower." It was so kind and unexpected that I could feel the colour on her cheeks. "Well, I'll keep you busy," he said. "If you need me, I'm upstairs in my office." The next few hours flew by. I decided the kitchen should be my priority, so I filled a plastic bowl with soapy water and started wiping down all surfaces. I found a radio station playing Christmas carols and started singing. Time flies. I unpacked the plates and glasses, found their spots, then scrubbed the old enamel sink until it glowed. When the doorbell rang, I was looking down the hall, wondering if I should answer myself, when Turner jumped down the stairs. After a short conversation, Turner came into the kitchen with a big box of pizza and a grin. "Do you like pepperoni?" "Of course," I nodded, suddenly realizing how hungry I was. "You've done an amazing job here," Turner said, looking around. When he opened the box, I put 2 plates on the table, and then we sat down and ate to the accompaniment of Christmas music. It was the pizza I had in the kitchen with my old school friends, and I knew it would be a long time before I forgot that meal. And I knew that an old crush on Turner was on the verge of a revival. He hadn't changed much either. He was still the sweet, funny, and kind person I remembered so well. "You see, that was a pretty good idea from your mum," he said. "I'm glad I didn't wear it." I grinned, but Turner apologized. "I'm sorry if I'm wrong, Lucy." I shook my head. "Don't worry. I know how intimidating her mother can be." "I'm surprised you're still with her," he said. "She has no one else for her," I softly replied. "What about Tilly and Cora Lee?" said Turner. I said nothing. This was different. They were Mom's friends, not her family. It was my job to take care of her. "I always hated that she wouldn't let you go to prom," Turner mumbled. I stared at him. "Did you know about it?" "Oh yeah. I think the whole school guessed." I didn't want everyone to sympathize with me, so I blushed. "Don't let her boss keep you in charge," he said. It was silly, but I felt like I was on a cloud leaving Turner's house that night. It was so much fun to talk to someone who actually liked me and seemed to appreciate my company. Oh, I knew Turner didn't find me attractive. I knew he's not the type, but he was a lot of fun to be with. I can't wait to get back to his house tomorrow and help him clean up his family's room and put up the Christmas tree. "You're late," said my mother as I walked in the door. "I had a lot of work to do," I said, taking off my jacket. "I am exhausted." "Well, I worked hard and nobody died," Mum said. She smiled and went up the stairs. It would have been a mistake to let Mum know that we had a really good time tonight. The next few weeks were unlike any Christmas season I've ever known. Normally, I struggled to meet my mother's demands, so my Christmas spirit was compelled. Now I ran away. I stayed at Turner's house most nights and sang Christmas carols while cooking dinner. It was like we were back in the habit of being friends, as if we had never parted. It went on to cover all sorts of topics: hopes and dreams, likes and dislikes, favourite movies and music. No one in the world made me feel as special and interesting as Turner. One day, while we were talking about relationships with the opposite sex, Turner asked me if I had ever been in love. I frowned hesitantly. "Don't know." Truth was slipping more and more into what felt like love for Turner. Was not possible. There was someone, I admitted. I dated Hivalu's manager, Harold, for a little over 2 years, and I think I thought I loved him at the time. "What's wrong?" Turner sipped the hot chocolate I made. "He met someone else," I said simply. "Idiot," Turner muttered. "I didn't mean to," I said softly. "What about you?" He sighed. "It's complicated, Lucy. Let's say my ideal woman isn't here yet. So, what kind of person is your ideal wife?" I was really curious. Turner smiled. "She's attractive, sexy, funny, mischievous. She knows what she wants in her life, and she's not afraid to stand up for herself. However, she also has a quiet side. She is loyal and kind." "Nice but nice, in other words," I said. Turner burst into laughter. "I wish I could say that." I couldn't help but think about what Turner told me about his ideal wife. It was clear that he was the last woman he thought of about the qualities he wanted in a woman, and yet I also considered myself loyal and quiet, or never used the word funny. I was nice, but not cocky. When I got home that night, I looked at myself in the makeup mirror and studied hard. He had shoulder-length brown hair that he always wore in a ponytail, blue eyes, and a normal nose and mouth. There was nothing that could become one. I frowned critically at the sensible navy blue sweater and wondered how something more daring would look, maybe with a little makeup. "Lucy Bishop, what do you think you're doing?" My mother's voice made me jump up and turn my head. "I thought you were at the book club tonight with Tilly and Coralie," I said. She came into my room and stared at me deprecatingly. "You seem to be spending more time at Turner Calhoun. There's a lot to do here too." "Mummy, just a reminder, Christmas is 10 days away. John and Susan will be arriving on Christmas Eve with their families, but they haven't started the preparations yet." "We meant me." I felt miserable. Mum started walking away, but when she got to my door, she turned around and looked at me. "A man like Turner Calhoun wouldn't care about someone like you, would he?" she said. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. My mother has always had the ability to shatter any sign of confidence in me with great ease, often with one glance. I nodded. I said good, and left the room. She tried to tell herself that maybe her words were the wake-up call I needed. After all, Turner never showed me anything but friendship. He chatted, and we always laughed a lot, but he never showed any desire to kiss me. The next afternoon, I was miserable walking down the mall with his mother's list in my wallet. I was tasked with buying gifts for my brother and sister, their spouses and children, and finding the perfect items for Coralie and Tilly. The shop windows sparkled, the children's faces lit up, and the couples seemed more in love than ever before. My heart felt very heavy. I realized that I did something very stupid. She fell in love with Turner. She's not in schoolgirl ways either. This time, I knew deep down in his heart and soul that Turner was the man I wanted to spend my life with. And it was so crazy and pointless. I will never be more than his friend. I checked each item on my list one at a time and went home. She knew that even if I tried to follow her mother's instructions, she would probably criticize my purchases. She then criticized the way I packed everything. Negative thoughts about Christmas Day flooded me. The house was packed, and John and his wife Liz had his 3 teenagers. Susan and her husband Jeff had a 10-year-old boy and her 8-year-old daughter. I was always responsible for entertaining the children, and the bulk of the cooking was usually on me. The thought of dreamy Christmas fills my throat with lumps. I woke up in Turner's arms, and he told me how much he loved me. Then we opened presents under the tree that I had put up in his family room, and we prepared Christmas dinner together in the kitchen. There was not a single moment when I was exhausted, miserable, or disappointed. I would feel valued and loved. I was about to cry, so I stopped in front of the shop window and searched my purse for a handkerchief. "Wipe your face and take a deep breath until you feel calm." I found myself standing in front of a women's clothing store, staring out the window. I will never wear what this store sells. For one thing, I didn't have a social life, and for another, my mother didn't like it. One jumper caught my eye. It was black, soft, delicate as a spider's web, strewn with tiny silver sequins. I felt sad that it would never happen once in a million years. A word that popped into my head, naughty, but good when I entered the store without really understanding why. I stopped and looked around in confusion. I was surrounded by beautiful and sophisticated clothes and jewelry. The air smelled of perfume, and a charming blonde girl approached me with a smile. "How are you?" she asked in a friendly tone. "Well, I'm not sure," I said. "There's a sweater in your window. Black ones." "Oh, that's great," she said. 10 minutes later, I was in the dressing room with a black sweater and a few other things. I found a pale grey skirt that shimmered past the knee, another sweater in a glamorous shade of blue, and black high-heeled boots. When I tried everything, I wondered what got me in. When I paid for everything, I asked myself the same question again. "Can I make a suggestion?" the clerk asked. I nodded, and she showed me her big crystal teardrop earrings. "This will go very well with your new clothes," she said. "I'll take it," I said. Her clothes sat in the trunk of my car for 3-4 days, while I blamed myself for wasting so much money recklessly. But one night after my shift, I mustered up some courage and put on a black sweater. I put on my earrings and untucked his hair from his ponytail and tossed it around my face. I entered Turner's house and looked around. As usual, he worked upstairs. My routine was to clean out the living room and kitchen before starting dinner. Turner would usually come downstairs and help me while we talked, and then eat together. Tonight, I dusted the wooden bookshelves, polished the coffee table, and vacuumed the patterned carpet in the family room. Was cleaning while her husband worked in her upstairs office. I never confess my dreams to my soul. To those who know me, I was a simple, sensible little Lucy Bishop, still living at home with her mother and without a life of her own. If only everyone knew that I longed to be content with myself, have my own home, and live a free adult life. I vacuumed and headed to the kitchen. There was a large mirror in the hallway, and I stopped when I saw myself reflected. I bit my lip and suddenly felt very stupid. The sweater I was wearing was too dressy for evening chores and cooking. What would Turner think? He immediately finds out that I dressed up for him and feels sorry for me. He knew he had to change, but before he could take 2 steps in the hallway, he heard Turner's voice coming down the stairs. "Lucy, you are beautiful." When I forced him to smile, he felt the heat on his face. "Thank you. Are you going out somewhere tonight?" he asked, looking at me with admiration. I shook my head. I just wanted to wear something different for a change. I know I look too elegant. "I will not do it. You look great," he countered me with a grin. "Going out?" I felt a little panic. "I can't. Mama is waiting for me to come back." "It won't take long," he said. "Come on, Lucy. Have a little rest." 10 minutes later, when Turner drove me into town, I wondered why I was so nervous. If I didn't want this, did Turner want to notice me and realize that I was more than just Jane? I couldn't help it. I wasn't used to people wanting my company or being interested in me. Turner looked at me like he could read my mind. "Calm down, okay? That'll be interesting." And somehow I relaxed over the next few hours. We walked into a casual restaurant serving home-cooked meals and were ushered to a table for 2, near a Christmas tree, lit by tiny white lights. We both ordered meatloaf. Turner grinned at me across the table. "I've wanted to do this for a while. Do you have one?" I couldn't hide my surprise from the voice. He nodded. "I have a question. My parents are coming over on Christmas Day. Did you expect me to come in the afternoon?" Her heart was pounding, and she told herself to calm down. "Do you help in the kitchen?" I asked lightly. Turner hesitated. "Well, maybe a little bit, but I thought it might be fun to see you. And I know your parents would be happy to see you again." I hesitated. I didn't expect Turner to ask me to spend Christmas with him. I didn't understand. I was afraid to read too much into our relationship. I cared about this man, and it made me vulnerable. "It would be nice to see your parents again," I said. "But I'm not sure. My sister and brother always spend Christmas with me and my mother." "I see," Turner nodded. "But if I can change my mind and run away, I'd love to see you at Christmas." His voice was soft and sent shivers down his spine. We enjoyed our meal, and then Turner took me back to his house. He thanked me for a nice night, and he leaned over and kissed me softly on the side of my face. "You're welcome, Lucy," he said. I couldn't keep a silly grin off my face as I drove home. Could it be possible? Could Turner really like me? I was no expert when it came to men, but there was no mistaking the way Turner had looked at me tonight. And he'd kissed me. The smile faded from my face as I let myself into the house. Mum sat at the kitchen table and glared at me. "Where are you now?" she asked. "I've been working," I said, but that wasn't entirely true. "No," Mama snapped. I called Turner Calhoun's house and got no answer. "Where were you?" "He took me out to dinner," I said wearily, as I took off my coat. My mother looked at me with eyes that couldn't put her anger into words. Then she shook her head. "I hope you're not in love with Turner Calhoun, Lucy." "Of course not," I lied. "You're not his type." There was a touch of humour in her voice. "I don't want to make fun of you again like I did with Harold." "Good night," I said, and she walked past her, even though she knew she had more to say. I couldn't bear to hear it. The worst part was knowing she was probably right. What made Turner interested in me? He only showed me friendship. That night, I cried and tried to sleep, but as Christmas approached, I could not shake my grief. I managed to make it through my shift at the diner, but I was quiet and insecure in Turner's presence, and I didn't know how he felt for me. The day before Christmas Eve, he smiled sadly at me when we said goodbye. "Even if you change your mind, you're still welcome at Christmas." I nodded and swallowed the lump in my throat. Turner leaned over and kissed my face. He kissed him quickly and lightly. "Merry Christmas," he said. The dawn of the big day was bright and beautiful, the sun shining down on the frosted roofs and sidewalks. I got up early and started with coffee and cinnamon rolls. The turkey was in the oven before everyone else opened their presents. Although my heart was hurt, I laughed and rejoiced with my family that day. "Lucy, you are a million miles away," her mother said, as I was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. "I'm sorry," I muttered. "It's Christmas," she reminded him. I wish I could at least try to be cheerful. Susan came into the kitchen with her leftovers. "What happened?" she asked. "Oh, your sister is still in love with Turner Calhoun," said Mama. "What?" Susan stared at me for a moment, then she burst into laughter. Tears of her humiliation filled my eyes. I took off the apron I was wearing to protect my clothes and turned to my mother and sister. "I'm going out," I said. "Out?" Mum repeated. "But I haven't eaten dessert yet." "See you later," I said. They stared at me in amazement when I left the house. As I started the car and drove away, a feeling of relief struck me, and what Turner had said came to mind. His ideal wife wasn't just charming and funny. She knew what she wanted in her life, and she wasn't afraid to stand up for herself. For the first time, I really stood up to my mum. I definitely did because I knew what I wanted in life. I wanted the freedom to make my own decisions and live my own life. I also wanted Turner, but that was something I didn't want to think too much about. I didn't know if he meant to be my friend or more. The house where I spent my happy hours these past few weeks was beautiful, all lit up with a Christmas-like welcome. The front door opened before I got there, so Turner must have seen me approach. He smiled at me and opened his arms. I entered her immediately. His kiss fell on my lips this time. "I'm so glad you made it," he said softly. I could tell from the look in Turner's eyes that we were more than just friends. It's been 3 years, and I'm living with Turner in the house where I used to work as a housekeeper. We got married a few months ago. I will always remember Christmas when I discovered that I could be naughty and nice and found the courage to start a whole new life.